Welcome to Transforming Work with Sophie Wade, exploring the future of work. Find out what's going on, disruptions, evolutions, opportunities, challenges, and interventions in our multi-generational distributed organizations. With a new tech and talent focus, discover what you need to know to stay upskilled and relevant and ensure your business keeps its competitive edge. Sophie investigates the promise and reality of the future of work now and as we look ahead. She interviews people who are changing work experiences and practices and shares how we can each transition smoothly and successfully to effective and more productive new ways of working.
Hi. This episode is about the strategic role of human resources and taking a holistic and integrated approach to talent management. How can companies compete in the new era of work if they aren't elevating, emphasizing, and engaging their talent, which requires human resources to have a strategic seat at the C-suite table, working closely with and across divisions? Wouldn't human resources be more effective if the functions and goals weren't siloed, and instead were working seamlessly together to ensure people, jobs, and skills were matched and monitored ongoing, adjusting appropriately to evolving business needs? Holistic leadership would improve how employees are hired, assigned, and reassigned into, within, and around organizations. HR could also facilitate greater engagement of non-employees in the extended talent pool. All these efforts would support less volatile and more reliable and stable prospects for workers, benefiting from a variety of employment arrangements, which could greatly reduce future overhiring and the negative long-term effects of layoffs. And that is why I'm delighted to be speaking with Alison Allen. Until very recently, Alison was at Twitter as the Vice President Global Talent Acquisition. With an integrated, strategic perspective of human resources, Alison benefits from broad experiences, including having been Chief People Officer at Lincoln Center, VP Diversity and Inclusion and Talent at Verizon Media, and Global Practice Leader Organizational Development at Bloomberg. Hi, Alison. How are you?
Good. How are you? So great to be here. Thank you.
I am delighted to be speaking with you today. There is so much that's happening in the world of work, the new developments, and all kinds of economic challenges that are changing how we're needing to proceed and progress. You've had some very interesting roles. You started out at McKinsey in consulting, and then you went into banking in different roles. Please just take us through some of those steps and why you made the choices you did.
Interestingly enough, I actually started off in risk management at Coca-Cola. No one really knows that, but I did.
Oh, okay.
I thought for some reason I wanted to sort of start off and be the same as my mom, who was like insurance salesperson. So I thought something in insurance. That lasted like 2 minutes. And then I was just like, I can't,
Okay.
This is not me at all. And so I was able to get myself into IT. And so I started off on the help desk and helping people with technology. And very quickly got bored of that and decided I want to teach people how to use technology.
Okay.
And got bored with that and realized that I was actually more interested in humans, like real humans and everything that makes up the human. Right. And so landed an opportunity really at McKinsey to do change management. And I think that opened my eyes
Fascinating.
to humans and how they think. I mean, what better group of people to sort of understand how human thinks than to work with consultants who actually advise organizations on how to do things.
Right.
And so I joined at a time when McKinsey was going through a bunch of internal change, and we were taking things away and adding things to consultants' lives, and that was just really fascinating in terms of people's reactions.
What kind of things were you taking away or changing up?
Basically, we were taking away, I hope I don't get in trouble saying this, but we were taking away how they build charts. So they had a proprietary software where they built waterfall charts, which is, everybody knows a waterfall chart is mostly what McKinsey uses. And so we took away that proprietary software and we were putting them on PowerPoint. And it was the hardest thing for them. It was so difficult for them because they were used to moving fast, right? Getting things done, having presentations be beautifully laid out, everything being really easy for them. And we were disrupting them and changing them to something around PowerPoint. And the reason for that was that clients themselves could not use the documents that we were giving them. They wanted to repurpose this document that they had just spent all of this money getting. right? And they couldn't use it. So clients wanted it. So we put them on PowerPoint, and it took about 2 years
Wow.
to
Okay.
get it baked into the process and get them to use it. But it was a fascinating job because it was a chance to really learn how people.
Yeah, people are so resistant to change.
Oh my God. But I mean, look, there's reasons why you're comfortable because it makes you move fast. But at the same time,
Yeah.
when you have a real good business reason for why you need to do something, it's like it's to stop feeling like a mandate and feels like, okay, something we should just get on with. So
Right.
did that for a while, joined Cushman & Wakefield at the same time. They were going through all kinds of rules around diversity. California was changing their laws and basically all this need for diversity and respect and dignity and treating people fairly was necessary. So I came in and looked at basically all of their practices around something as basic as performance management and overhauled their entire performance management process, basically put some rules and guidelines around that. That launched me into Deutsche Bank, which really wasn't going through a lot of change, but really it was around just talent, working with talent and leadership at the executive level, which I enjoyed so much. Left there, went to Bloomberg. This was a great time at Bloomberg because Bloomberg was really, Mike was in the office and Dan Dockroff took over. Dan Dock wanted to bring a lot of professionalism to Bloomberg. Bloomberg was a one leader shop, which was Mike. And Mike and Dan wanted to bring in leadership levels, leadership philosophy, leadership beliefs,
fascinating change.
like a whole bunch of different things, building teams, like real teams, organizational design structure. So lots of change going on in the org. It's growing globally. So we went from 14,000 people at Bloomberg to roughly 21,000 when I left. And we had grown globally in a real strategic way. Left there, joined AOL, which had just been bought by Verizon. And sounds like my job is just like I look out for organizations going through change, doesn't it?
It does.
It's sort of like organizational change throughout the roles, AOL, Yahoo coming together. And then I left there and did my own thing for a little bit and then joined Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. I know.
So what were some of the key things that you were enjoying? You found that one of your key skills was helping people deal with change?
I think what it was interesting to me, I can answer that question in two ways by saying, yes, I loved the idea of what do people need in order to deal with change? And what it boiled down to is communication strategy and understanding. And then time to just transition to a new behavior. That's what it came down to. But I think I found the work interesting because I realized that all of these disparate parts of HR that don't really work in tandem with each other, a change event causes all of these things to have to go like this. And I think I found it fascinating. That's like, wouldn't it be better if people teams could be much more cohesive? And that we could take all of the aspects of people work and bring it all together instead of looking at it as like, oh, that's the OD team. Oh, that's learning and development. And oh, that's recruiting. So I think it was fascinating to help people get through it. But at the same time thinking, how do we make this better? And what could we be doing functionally so that we can think about these things before they need to happen, right? How do we get people more comfortable with the notion that things will change? They're not going to stay the same.
So you're really well set up to deal with where we are now in terms of the future of work, in terms of all the changes.
I think so, yeah.
I point people to Alvin Toffler's Future Shock, which basically says human beings don't like dealing with this much change. But you are a person who is really well set up to understand the strategic aspect of HR and how all these elements need to come together. How have you been observing other companies, but also being involved in different companies and obviously doing some freelancing? What have been some of your observations and thoughts over the last 5-6 years?
I have never thought, and sometimes it sometimes gets me in trouble, but I've never thought as you're in this role, so that's the only thing you can talk about.
Right.
So I always think to myself, okay, I'm in this role and I'm at the table and I've done all these other roles. And so how do I bring all that context together? Right. And I think it's important to do that as leaders today. Like, oh yes, I'm in the TA space. I can only talk about recruiting. It's like, no, I need to think about I've got to recruit somebody who's got to get in a seat, who's got to work for that manager, who's got to do that job.
Mm-hmm.
So what's my job to make sure that person's successful? What's my job to make sure that that manager knows how to lean into that person? And what's my job to make sure that the job is right and scope's right?
And particularly now when the job is much less defined by the job title than the skills that are currently required. And having evolved at this point to talent acquisition, you need to be trying to hire someone who has the skills for where it's going to be, or interested in the skills where it may be going to go.
Yeah. And I think that the thing that I think to get back to your question, it's like, I think I just do not think about my role as my role.
Right.
I think about my role as my responsibility, the thing that I'm going to be held accountable for. But my role is actually to figure out how all these pieces come together so that we can impact people in the best way. And we can actually impact the business in the best way. And so I think going through all of these different organizations and going through all of these change moments and going through all of these sort of, immensely, tiring, experiences. So I'm on the other side where I'm like, oh, look what we did. And so I'm on the other side where I'm like, yeah, not for me anymore. I think that going through that has just made it sort of like, okay, so what is the piece in which we can take from this, and how can I as a leader be better? Mm-hmm. And how do I think about things 2 or 3 steps down the road? Like as a TA leader, when I'm working with my team on performance management, I'm not sitting here going, okay, teach me how to do performance management. I ran performance management groups, so I don't need help on it. I just need a process. Yeah. And then now as a leader, I need to make it connect for people. And we don't have to look out for things outside of ourselves, I think is what I'm saying. So I'd like to be this holistic leader who, yes, I'm in a seat, but I'm thinking about everything that may be impacting the work that I do and the people who work on my teams.
So I'd love to ask you a question specifically about performance management, which has been evolving. I've often quoted the Deloitte study in 2013, which basically threw out ratings. Now, many companies haven't thrown them out completely, but they've tried to reformulate them. But the fact that 80% of a rating was dependent on the person who was doing the rating. Yeah. So just a sidebar, but an important sidebar, where is performance management now?
I'm going to get in so much trouble with my HR colleagues, right? But it's the same. I get in trouble with my diversity colleagues. So it's just like, I feel like HR and people teams have made these things so hard, right? But if you think about like what performance management was born out of, it was born out of protecting organizations, right? That's where it was born out of. Okay. And somewhere over the years, it started to be about, let's make it about people. Well, we didn't go far enough, right? We didn't go far enough to make it about people. So it's like, yes, we still want to protect the organization, but let's make it about people. And I think that's why we saw this swing. Get rid of ratings, don't judge people, like let them just do their job, blah, blah, blah. For me, take the tools away, take the training away, we as a leader, if I get to a performance conversation and you and I are not on the same page about where you are, then I failed, right?
Right.
So performance management for me is like you and I are constantly on the same page about where you stand or how well you're doing. You and I are on the same page around how well you think I should be doing. And when I think about where we are in performance management, I think we're in a constant struggle with traditional ways of doing things, radical ways of doing things, and nobody really knows what we want to do with this work. And I think we're making it harder than it needs to be. Which for me, it's really literally about being on the same page.
I wrote a book about empathy in terms of human understanding because it does require that for you and I to be on the same page, we really need to be able to understand each other.
100%.
And that's not easy. I mean,
it's not. And it's also, we don't make time for that too, right? It's the role of leader, right? To figure out how do I connect with the person that's in front of me? And I want to say that again, which is like, it's my responsibility to figure out how to connect with Sophie, just like it's my responsibility to figure out how to connect with John Doe. And John Doe and Sophie might be completely different people.
For sure.
And so my approach for both of you may or may not be the same.
Yeah.
But it's my job because my job is to be on the same page. And I think there's empathy in taking the time to figure out how do I connect with you so you and I can hear each other.
Yeah.
And contract around things. And I think we're just Organizations are still very robotic about this process. I think organizations are throwing it out the window because they're tired about it. I think organizations, it's still one of these areas. It's like feedback, right? And I don't know if you remember the days when HR used to say, feedback is a gift. And that was like our way of trying to make people feel better about feedback. And it's like, it's not a gift. It's like an expectation. It's like, you need me to be on the same page with you. Right. I need to be on the same page with you because we need to get work done. There's no other way to think about it. It's not a gift. Like, stop selling it and just make it about what it is, which is like, let's just contract. Like, we need to talk about this. You know, I have somebody I used to work with in a previous company. It's like, she literally showed up in her performance review knowing that she should go on to do something else. And she wasn't mad about it. She wasn't frustrated about it. I was literally about to put her on a PIP. And she showed up and said, I just don't think this is for me. I don't have another job. I'm not asking for a package. I just don't think this is for me. And you've been so great. You've been so great in coaching and training and all these things. And it made me feel like it's weird because you have this person who's like basically signing off. You should be devastated by that. But it's like, at the same time, it's like, you know that you've accomplished something when someone actually understands where they are and how well they're doing against something. And they themselves take the decision that you don't have to then take.
I believe companies should help people recognize that. And also because talent mobility internally is still extraordinarily hard, and it's easier for the most part still to leave an organization than actually move up. So now I understand the evolution of the different roles that you've had. It makes total sense now. And is talent acquisition the one you find that you enjoy the most? You've mentioned before we started that you love organizational development, which I think is just fascinating psychologically. In all of these different experiences, I'm just curious as to which elements of it excite you the most.
I think I'm excited about TA right now. I've always been excited about TA. I've always, it's been one of those areas that
talent acquisition, like,
either, talent acquisition, sorry. And I'm excited about it now because I think there's a huge opportunity in this moment for TA organizations to step back and reframe. If you think about, think to yourself, like how many teams within a people team have gone through some kind of transformation over the last, 10, 20 years? Not one of them have been TA organizations. And I think TA organizations right now need to step back and say, okay, we're all transaction. We're all about butts and seats. We're ebbing and flowing all over the place. People throw more bodies at us instead of looking at internal practices to figure out how to retain people through internal mobility. We need to step back and sort of think to ourselves a little bit differently. And so I'm excited about what's possible for TA. I think it's one of the reasons why I joined Twitter was because there was just this opportune moment to sort of think about, rather that, Twitter's culture when I was there was really like, oh, something new happens, hire more people. It's like, oh, there's a new thing, hire more people. It's like, whoa, wait, why don't we look and see who's not doing anything? And, let's ask ourselves, are people working on the most important things? Maybe we can kill that.
And understand the skills. And assign people.
Because as a person sitting there working myself to death on something that I think is important, and I see somebody brand new come in doing something that's really interesting, but I wasn't even given a chance to do that or wasn't even asked. Now my engagement is like depleted. So it's like, I think TA is a really great place to be because I think we could be influential in not just attracting people, but retaining people, really putting thoughtful practices around internal mobility. I mean, even internal mobility sounds like the wrong word. I think when I was at Bloomberg, we did a huge overhaul around career development. And in career development, we didn't we didn't put it in just the hands of the people. We basically said, we're going to make this our responsibility because, talent belongs to Bloomberg. Talent doesn't belong to an individual. Your team isn't your team, Sophie. Allison, your team isn't your team. It belongs to Bloomberg. So your job is to retain that person at Bloomberg, not just on your team. So if you think about that, just that shift, right? Career development is really around being able to have really good practices in place that sort of say, when is some like having a pulse on when is somebody ready for something else?
Yep.
Are they
Yep.
interested in something else? Are they expressing? Are you having stay conversations, right? And so I think
Yeah.
TA has a huge opportunity to influence not just butts and seats, but career development.
Not just that moment when you're bringing them in, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think that for me is the part that's most exciting.
Yeah, and helping other divisions acquire people from other groups. I hadn't thought as much about how much the relationships need to be there. Obviously, if you don't have TA helping, you still need one to be willing to give somebody good up and let
Yes.
them go to a different division to develop more skills. But you need to have the relationships with the person in the next group or whatever the next step on their trajectory is. And that requires a lot of different aspects to my job as a manager or a leader that hasn't been written down. I agree very much that those elements need to be elevated or understood more in terms of what the role of leadership needs to be these days. So we're addressing lots of points which are so relevant to Gen Z, who I've spent a lot of time talking about. So many companies in the private sector, public sector, nonprofit are all very, very challenged to hire, engage, and retain Gen Z.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking to some of these elements, bring somebody into a job, attracting them, having the culture and the values. What are the different elements that you see through your experience for Twitter and companies before, as you've seen this evolution and the challenges, which I don't necessarily see as so much about the generation or the youth coming into the workplace, but much more about the situation, the new circumstances of work and how so much is changing. I'm interested in how you are thinking about talent and all these different elements in a very integrated and strategic way, how you particularly focus on some of the Generation Z challenges that your employers have been dealing with.
Yeah, I'll just go back to what I said before, which is like, my job isn't just TA, right?
Yeah.
The reason why organizational development practices exist is because organizational development practices, when they are really set up well, keep the pulse on external factors better than internal factors. They're just so aware of what drives people. Forget about the generational pieces.
Yeah, sure.
What drives people and what do people need, right? And then they have a way in which they influence that. And specifically as it relates to TA, it is our job in TA to understand what candidates are wanting.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding what candidates are wanting and understanding what candidates are needing, and not saying to ourselves, oh, well, we don't have that here. So, let's just let that person go. No, it's our job to sort of aggregate that, put that in some kind of data report, some kind of market analysis.
To influence the culture, to help reinforce the values.
And to go in and sort of say, okay, what are the places in which we can tweak how we treat people or how we benefit people or how we pay people or where we're sitting? And what we find is that actually, if you do that well, and again, we noticed this a lot at Bloomberg. I'm overusing Bloomberg as an example, mainly because I loved working there because it was this, you think about this place as like, we don't like change that did so much change. It was like, nuts. But one of the things that you do is you're bringing that information back and you look at places in which we can shift. And what you'll find is that internally, there are people who have been suffering, who've been just waiting for you to go, oh, we're going to do that thing. And they're just going, oh my God, I love this place. I love working here. Finally, someone said something. So I think it's this notion of like, just because I'm in a TA job and just because my job is to get people in, that is not the boundary for which my job sits. The boundary for which my job sits is to think about what are those external factors, what are the candidates saying, and then how do we bring that inside? And then when I think specifically about Gen Z, when I think about that talent group, I don't get worried about the fact that, I have two, I live with two, right?
Me too.
Both of my kids are in college. They have like my son's a he's in the finance program at Parsons, and he's like a painter, he's a graphic designer, he was learning how to play bass, he's like, he's a writer, like he's got like 15 things that he does, right? And the way he's able to sort of lean into every single one of those things and create something amazing is amazing. Now take that and expand that to a whole population of people who just want the freedom to sort of like lean into something but yet have other things for which they can touch and influence, right? And if you could learn from that, how could that benefit us in organizations? Like, how could we tap into the multifacetedness of this generation and say, what's the space in which we can create and let them play? And what are roles in which we can allow that flexibility for someone to be multifaceted, think about things differently, to challenge norms, to not do something we think they should do. And I think we haven't done that work well in organizations. Again, when I think about the different organizations that I've worked in, where I brought this intel back, they've been so open to change, but I don't think that organizations are prepared to be flexible. I hope wherever I'm going next, that I'm able to start influencing those conversations, because I do think that's what we've got to do.
Agreed. And the discomfort with which so many managers and executives approach the idea or receive the idea of side hustles.
I actually don't think we should worry about it.
If you're working with somebody who is, let's say they're also in TA or they're in HR, or a manager who wants you to hire someone into their team, and they are concerned about side hustles, what's your explanation as to why it's okay?
Because my explanation for why it's okay is that if I am satisfied, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to work harder than you need. Like when I was going back to Bloomberg again, we worked with a Hays group, which is now Korn Ferry, and we learned about discretionary effort. Mm-hmm. And discretionary effort is this notion of like, if people are set up for success, given what they need to do their job, able to accomplish what they need, they'll actually give you another 30% of discretionary effort. It's the work that you don't even know they're doing. They're working on Saturday. They're working at night. They work whenever, like in the middle of the night, because they had an idea, and they feel motivated and impassioned to do it.
Right.
And so for me, I would say, to answer a leader who is like, well, wait, I don't want him to teach guitar lessons on Saturday. I want him to be working on this code and it's like, who cares what they do in their sort of side hustles? Let them do what they want to do. It feeds them. Right. If you let them do what they want to do, you will get discretionary effort. You'll get a better product. You'll get a better outcome. You'll get more against a deliverable than you're expected. But as soon as you start to restrict someone and take away their ability to lean into the outlets for which they care about, let me use that word again, care about. Right. It doesn't mean that they don't care about getting paid or don't care about this job. These are things that they want to tap into for themselves because they care about them. You start to restrict them, which means they start giving you what you asked for. I'm going to give you 9 to 5 because you're paying me. And all you're going to get is that. Well, I'd love to tap into discretionary effort every single day. Yeah. Go off, do your thing. Here's the deliverable. Here's all I'm expecting you to do it. How are you getting it done? Like when I was at McKinsey, we didn't clock in, we didn't clock out. That was in the 90s. I was working home when I went to work home. In the 90s, I would call up and say, I'm working from home today, or send a message. I'm working. Right. Nobody called me and said, can you dial into Slack channel? Can you make sure that you are seen on a screen? Nobody did that. Why? Because we were assessed on our ability to deliver what was expected for us to deliver. How and when we did it, nobody cared. Right. And so why don't we do that? Why don't we do more of that? So I would say to that manager, tell them what you want them to do and let them do what they do and let them do what they want to do. On the side of that, you're going to get discretionary effort, and that's all we want. That's free. The salary is what we pay them for.
But there are the fundamentals of culture and values and the ability, the freedom to orient people towards their skills and strengths and stuff that they like doing, which many companies are not set up to do.
I think that probably shouldn't say that since I'm trying to go someone new, but it's like, I think organizations have to get over themselves. I think they really have to get over themselves. If nothing else that we've learned through COVID and social justice unrest and all the things that have been happening in the last year, the great resignation, the great, quiet quitting, and like everybody's just come up with a tagline for all the things that have been going on for years. It's like, I just think we just need to scope a job, give people some expectations, tell them when they're doing something great, tell them when they need some help, and let them do their jobs and move on. We need to get over ourselves. And we also need to move from this notion of like, we need to keep everybody.
Yeah.
Sometimes people come here for like, 6 months, a year, 2 years. And yes, there's a lot of sort of fringe cost that goes into that, but it's okay. We don't need everybody to retire from, like, I went into Twitter not thinking, oh, I want to retire from Twitter. And I should be thinking about retirement at my age, but I'm not, and I'm going to my next organization, not thinking I want to retire. As a matter of fact, if we're having retiring conversations, I become Gen Z. I'm like, I have no plan to retire from here.
Right. My pitch is it's unhealthy. It's bad for your brain. It's bad for your physical health. So finding a way to have many side hustles, and then your side hustle becomes your main hustle. Like that, I think is the most beneficial.
I told you on LinkedIn, like I want to be you when I grow up. Like everything you're doing, I'm like, yes, I want to do that. How do I do that while I'm working so hard? Like that's what the Gen Zers got. They have it. They work all the time. Like it's
yeah, I kind of do that. Some of the challenges that we're currently facing are to do with some overhiring, it feels to me. And whilst I'm not happy about layoffs, there's a lot to be said for having been more careful about hiring to begin with, so that we don't have this volatility in people's lives. Understanding that still we're dealing with a very dynamic business environment and trying to even that out for both companies and workers, I think is really important.
Yeah. No, I think, again, this goes back to just because my job is to hire people, it doesn't mean that my job is not also to challenge numbers or to challenge why we're hiring people or to ask questions around the kind of work or to say, is there anybody else inside who can do that job? Like, I think, again, it goes back to this notion of like leaders who are seeing their job as the thing that's in front of them and not seeing their job as like being organizational responsible, right? Like, I think I came out of Lincoln Center into Twitter as part of the great, resignation and everybody's hiring everybody and and so I remember thinking to myself, not specifically Twitter, but just in this whole thing of people overhiring, this is going to end badly. I had this feeling because it just didn't make sense to me. Like, how do we come out of COVID where data says or research says we had like some of the most productive years in organizations, thinking we need to start hiring like crazy? Like, what happened? Like, did products just all of a sudden need enhancements? Like, what happened, in that time? And I remember thinking it's going to end badly. And that's what's proven, right? It's huge layoffs and, resets and, huge swings. You were at home and very productive, but now you got to come back in the office 5 days. Like, it's like, it's just crazy to me. And so I think as a leader, it's our job, especially if we're running these different functions, to ask those questions.
Right.
To not just be in the seat of sort of saying, and it's annoying, you don't want my questions because it somehow that challenges your business strategy. And it means I'm trying to overstep. And it's like, no, my job is to get people in. My job is also to make sure we retain people and make sure that we're hiring the best people in their quality. We need to make sure we're doing that in a way so that people have a job on the other side. One of the things I hated doing is the first time in my career I've ever did this, is laying off people who hadn't actually started jobs yet. They're supposed to start in 2 weeks. They're supposed to start in a month. They're supposed to start in 2 months. Wow. And you're taking back their job. When we started doing that as an industry, that was a low for me. I think organizational leaders, especially in TA, especially in the people team, we have to get bolder in asking questions of the business.
Right.
We own a third of the strategy, right? Let's go to strategy. What makes a strategy? Business strategy is what we're going to do. Operational is how we're going to do it.
Right.
And people is going to be who's doing it. So if we know we've got business check, operational check, our job as people leaders, we have every right to challenge numbers and all of that, but we're not.
I think it is so critical now for HR to be included, for people to be included as part of the strategy. I think without that, without the CHRO or somebody who is responsible for people having a seat at that top level, I don't understand how that company is going to be able to compete and succeed because of all these different elements. Because, for example, Gen Z are so sensitive to that kind of stuff. If I heard my friend had that joy and that expectation of a new job and they were fired before they started it, that would put me off working in a corporate environment if that's what the company did.
It would probably put you off from the job, from the product, from the leaders, from everything. I have to sort of say,
sure.
Oh, you think we need 2,000 people? Why? And
right.
What are they going to be doing? And why don't we already have, well, if you don't, then you won't have any work. Like somebody actually said that to me the other day. Well, if we don't have hiring, we don't need recruiting. So my job is to figure out other places in which my team can be super influential. But the point here is like leaders in HR, people leaders have to ask questions that protect people, period.
Right.
We shouldn't be these transactional leaders who just do the activity of the crappy stuff that nobody really wants to take responsibility for because they made very bad business decisions on the other side.
When people really ask me as a, quote, work futurist, what I see in the future, because companies need to stay nimble, having a smaller core of full-time employees and having a much larger extended talent pool so that they aren't messing up people's lives all the time with this hiring and firing, but they have a group of familiar people that they can tap into who can have multiple clients so that they are not beholden to one company. That makes sense for the company and for these workers, their employees 100%. And non-employees. So that goes to exactly what you're saying. I understand that companies need flexibility, and I don't see that as being necessarily a bad thing to have that flexibility if there's also an understanding of what that means for employees or workers so that they can be supported as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So you have left Twitter and you can't tell me where you're going? No,
I'm excited.
You look excited?
I am. I'm excited because I really went into this role, this job search this time. And I thought to myself, I've always done this, but I guess I just take advantage of the fact that I just assume people are always good. But it's like looking for people I like. You know, I'm just like, okay, do I like this person? Could I see myself working with this person? You know, yes, are they smart? You know, would I want to have dinner with them after work and, you know, talk about, I don't know, flowers, you know, and so I'm excited about the work. 100%. I'm excited about the organization, but I'm probably most excited about the people. I'll be honest with you. I'm excited about that. Yeah.
And I'm curious about the culture of values, some of the elements of, you can't tell me the name, you have to give me a little bit more descriptions about what it is about this particular company that is so attractive to you in addition to the people. Because I think in an organization that works well, the people are sort of manifestations of the culture or the other way around.
Yeah. I think from every conversation I had from, head of diversity, I talked to the CPO, I talked to the CTO. I think in every single conversation, especially even with the CEO, who I thought was so giving of his time, I was like, I think I spoke to him over an hour. He was literally going to buy a tree for Christmas. Like it was just like literally. But there was this consistent thing where, you know, so going back to what I just said, which is this philosophy around, you know, we got to know what we're going to do and we need to figure out how to operationalize that.
Right.
And our operations need to be as agile as our business model. But more than that, the people that we hire need to be agile as well. So there was things around agility and leadership and accountability and responsibility, but also integration, like not having these sort of fiefdoms and silos and my stuff is over here and your stuff is like those things
and
are
don't touch.
And don't touch. Oh my God. It's like, but I need to touch what you're doing because it impacts me, you know?
You had this fantastic career, which has had so many touch points and so many experiences. That's a huge benefit these days, to have the understanding so that when you're going cross-discipline, you have that intelligence that can improve the conversation.
Yes.
and it's not an unequal conversation. And that can actually lead to much more productive interactions and understanding, and have that sort of integration that you're looking for, which I do think is incredibly valuable, particularly now. So, Alison, what haven't I asked you that I should have done?
I don't believe in should-haves, so I'm just going to say I think you've asked me everything.
Right, nor do I.
No.
No. What could I have asked you that I did not?
Could you have asked me? No, I think we hit everything that's really like. There's so much. I would love to just talk to you about the empathy. I have to read your book. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. I have to read it. I just feel like this. I think the world needs more empathetic leaders, but I think we have to help people recognize that empathy doesn't correlate to soft and weakness.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the strongest empathetic leaders I've worked with, and by the way, I don't consider myself an empathetic leader. I consider myself a leader who has empathy, right? And the difference is how I start and what motivates me. Like, I'm motivated by strategy. I'm motivated by business. I'm motivated by get things done. But I recognize, again, I can't do any of those things without people. I know empathetic leaders who are motivated by people, motivated by team, motivated by harmony, motivated by all these things. All of those things are important. And so I think there's this, when you call, like I've given, like in Twitter, I was talking to a leader. I was like, oh my God, you lead with so much empathy. It's so awesome. And they're like, no, I don't. No, I don't. I'm strong. And it's like, it's like, what? It's just like, everything has nothing to do with like, you're not strong. I mean, sorry, that's not what I meant.
Well, now they're calling the soft skills power skills. That's a much better way to put it, because then we don't have to have this conversation about soft and strong.
Yeah. So I think there's something around like really, at some point digging into, I'd love to dig in and learn more about like where you're going with this teaching and helping leaders, because I do think there's a huge opportunity there. And I actually think that's what's missing from the world right now. And it's the thing when I look at the business decisions that leaders are making, fill in the blank organizations, but just, a lot of them are not leading with a lot of empathy right now. Yeah. Get back in the office 4 days a week, for why, what's the benefit of that? And how does that serve the organization? And so I think there's huge work and opportunity there. So we don't need to talk about that, but that's something I think it's top of mind for me.
My last thing always is, what is something that somebody who is in HR or dealing with HR, in TA, in that world of people, what could they be doing differently tomorrow to make the kind of change that you think is going to be helpful, whether it's to do with Gen Z or generally in this very, very challenging, evolving new era of business and work?
Shift from silos within the people team and integrate everything. The people team cannot be siloed. Every piece of the people team has to be integrated and work well together. So I would shift from silos and integrate everything. It doesn't mean that you don't have leaders in place. It doesn't mean that you don't have teams. But I should know it should be as important to me as a TA leader that we retain people. That doesn't become the HR business partner's job or the head of development's job. It's my job as well. To look for ways to break down silos and integrate the function is what I would say.
Love that.
Yeah.
Alison, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I love the experiences you've had, how you bring them together, how you've been using them and adding to them all the way along. I am very excited for your next adventure. And I look forward to keeping in touch and hearing how you like my book.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alison. Thanks again so much to Alison Allen, a strategic human resources executive focused on integrated talent management, who will be working at a new company starting February 2023. Check out where she goes next. You can follow Alison on LinkedIn, on Twitter at ALlenNYC, AALLEN_NYC, and on Instagram at aallen.nyc, AALLEN.NYC. Immediate action tip.
Within your people team, look for ways to break down the silos and integrate everything so objectives are not isolated by function. For example, it should be important to the talent acquisition leader to retain as well as hire people. The need for human resources to have a strategic seat at the C-suite table is highlighted, along with the holistic responsibilities of leadership, as part of the human-centric system described in my book, Empathy Works, The Key to Competitive Advantage in the New Era of Work, which you can find at your favorite online or retail booksellers. If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell a friend, like it, and do write a quick review wherever you listen. For weekly video updates, follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter at @ASophieWade. For curated, useful articles, research, and information to help navigate this period of transformation, sign up for my Work in Progress newsletter on LinkedIn and my blog, which is available on sophiewade.com and flexcelnetwork.com. Until next time.